Thank you all. And our special thanks for the fact that since the parliament is in session and today probably the no confidence motion against the speaker is to be tabled at around 3 o'clock, still they have taken time out and come here physically for the forum. We are really grateful to you. Without much ado, now I'll just introduce Dr. Ajit Ranade, who's our founder member and trustee of ADR. He is a BTech from IIT Mumbai, MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, PhD in economics from Brown University, and he is taught at Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, Mumbai for 5 years, and he is also taught in various universities in USA, written a number of academic papers, participated in several national, international seminars. He is one of the authors of the recent award-winning book, Rising to the China Challenge. He is a noted economist. He was the group executive president and chief economist with the Aditya Birla Group. His over 30 years career has spanned academic, research and corporate assignments. Prior to the Aditya Birla Group, he was the chief economist and head of the microfinance business of ABN AMRO Bank. He was a professor at ICRIER, New Delhi. He served as a member of several committees of the Reserve Bank of India and as a member of the apex committees of national industry bodies such as CII and FICCI. He was appointed as member of the Economic Task Force for the post-COVID economic recovery by the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. And Dr. Ajit Ranade has been an independent director of the Clearing Corporation of India, CCIL, since November 22, and also independent director in the persistent system. After his retirement from Aditya Birla Group, he was appointed the Vice Chancellor of the Gokhale Institute of Political Science and Economics in Pune, where he was for 3 years. And thereafter, he is continuing with his writings and travels and talks all over the country as well as abroad. So with that, thank you. I'll now hand over to Dr. Ajit Ranade to conduct this session. And like I mentioned, the sequence can kindly be followed because they all have to leave for the parliament. And Venkatesh can be taken last. He's online.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, General Anil Verma. Thank you for the very kind introduction. I'm delighted and privileged to welcome you all. I hope Shelley and others will persuade the others who are having their cup of tea and to join us inside. A special welcome, of course, to many people who are, by the way, joining online. Let me quickly introduce and very briefly, with your permission, each of our distinguished panelists have a very impressive bio. But let me just introduce them very briefly. On my immediate left is Mr. Manish Tewari. He is a third-term member of Parliament representing Chandigarh constituency, and he's a member of the Lok Sabha. That's why some of our members have to rush for this confidence vote in Lok Sabha. There are several things in his bio, but let me mention that he's been active. He's a minister. He's a former minister. He's been a minister in the government. He practices law at the Supreme Court of India. He was a distinguished senior fellow at the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. from 2016 to 19. And apart from his parliamentary and professional responsibilities, he is also a senior national spokesperson of the Indian National Congress, a General Secretary, Foreign Affairs Department of the Congress Party, and a permanent invitee to the Congress Working Committee. His latest book on India's national security, entitled 10 Flashpoints, 20 Years National Security Situations That Impacted India, was a bestseller. He has moved various bills in Parliament, not limited to the legal basis and so on. And he has interest in various things like intelligence agencies and cyberspace and artificial intelligence. Special welcome to you, Mr. Manish. On his left is Mr. Saurabh Bhardwaj, who is a senior leader of the Aam Aadmi Party and a 3-time MLA from the Greater Kailash constituency. He also served as a minister in the government of Delhi, including portfolios of health, power, industries, urban development, irrigation, flood control, transport, food and supply, environment, arts and culture. Currently, he is the Delhi State President of the Aam Aadmi Party, and he has previously served as the chief spokesperson of his party. So welcome, Mr. Bhardwaj. On his left is Dr. Gumma Thanuja Rani, member of the 18th Lok Sabha, the current Lok Sabha, from the YSR Congress Party of Andhra Pradesh. She represents the Araku constituency from Andhra Pradesh. She is a medical professional, of course. She is a doctor. Welcome, Dr. Rani. On her left is Dr. Niranjan Sahoo, who is Senior Fellow of ORF, a think tank on governance and politics initiative. And of course, he's got huge number of years of experience and expertise in governance and public policy and so on. He's been a recipient of the Asian Fellowship and a former Ratan Tata Fellow. He has written 2 books on politics of power sector reforms in India and the reservation policy and its implementation across domains in India. He's got another book coming, and he's also got a monograph called Funding India's Democracy. So welcome, Dr. Sahoo. And of course, finally, online, we have Mr. Venkatesh Nayak, I think joining us from Bengaluru. He is director of the Commonwealth Health Rights Initiative, with whom he has spent several years. He was closely associated with the public education process and the lobbying for members of parliament for the passage of the Right to Information Act back in 2005. He has been a co-convener of the National Campaign for People's Right to Information between 2011 and 2025. He has designed and rolled out many training programs for RTI. In fact, he's known, in my mind at least, as one of the Mr. RTIs, very active in RTI. And till date, he has trained more than 9,000 government officers and senior executives in the public sector on RTI. He has provided technical expertise in drafting of RTI bills and implementation of RTI laws. And he's also a member of the International Advisory Board of Human Rights Program for the University of Arizona. So with that introduction of our panelists, let me just spend a couple of minutes about the session. The session is on financial transparency in elections. That is, who funds political parties, how is that money spent, and how do we reduce the influence of money power on politics and elections in our democracy. We talked about muscle power, whereas criminalization of politics in the earlier session. This is going to be on money power. See, elections and democracy, politics needs money. There is no doubt about that. Political campaigns require organization, travel, communications, workers, publicity, data, logistics, mobilization. All of that needs money. So it's not a question of whether politics needs funding or needs money. The question is, the real issue is this funding transparent? Pardarshakta. Is it fair? Is it accountable? And is it consistent with the level playing field? So this is where we have a problem. The electoral bond scheme actually took us in the opposite direction. It sort of legalized opacity, made things opaque. It institutionalized anonymity. It told citizens that you may vote, you have a right to vote, but you do not have a right to know who is financing those who seek to govern you. So that was deeply damaging to our democratic accountability. The Supreme Court struck it down, so that's welcome. That it's based on an important principle that in a democracy, the voter has a right to know. If political funding remains hidden, then influence is hidden. If influence is hidden, then accountability is weakened. If accountability is weakened, democracy, of course, is damaged, because it stops being a contest of ideas and it starts becoming a contest of financial muscle. So, that's why campaign finance and transparency is important. But let's admit that after electoral bonds, the problem has not been solved. What the data from the bonds, post-data which has been compiled by ADR, and the report is with you, what it is revealing is extreme concentration. The financial advantage seems to have flowed disproportionately to one political party. So if one party commands vast and great resources, then all its rivals put together, it's not just merely a bookkeeping fact. It becomes a democratic concern. It affects visibility. It affects messaging. It affects campaign reach. It affects narrative dominance. It affects the very meaning of a level playing field. So we must ask this question: can elections remain genuinely free and fair when money power is so unequally distributed and concentrated? And of course, this is about funding. Then the second question is about expenditure. The debate often focuses not just on where the money comes from, but that's only half the story. Where does it go? On publicity, on propaganda, on campaign infrastructure, on digital messaging, on data operations, media amplification, AI. I think in the earlier session we mentioned AI, third-party surrogates, indirect influence. Where does it go? So on the expenditure side also we need transparency. And these formal accounts don't tell us everything. They tell us something. They don't tell us the whole story. So, you know, in modern elections, it's not spending just not on petrol and posters and, you know, vehicles, public meetings. It is so many other things. It's social media, digital campaigns, consultants, data analytics, targeted communications, commissioned surveys, decentralized influence networks. So the law and disclosure systems are not keeping pace with this transformation. And, you know, so what do we, you know, so here are some practical things. Like we need, on the funding side, we need full and timely disclosure of political donations. Not months later, not buried in obscure filings, but anything that an ordinary citizen and voter can actually use. Secondly, about transparency of expenditure. It should include everything. Third parties, allied entities, digital ecosystems. And thirdly, so it's about funding, it's about spending. And thirdly, it's also about auditing and strict reporting standards, you know, verifiability. Because what's happening is that without verification, the transparency is just paperwork. Has it been verified? Is it audited by a third-party auditor? And of course, we must also look at corporate funding. What happens is that the Supreme Court judgment, you know, address this issue of setting up a shell company, even a loss-making company to do political funding. But, you know, the weak disclosure of corporate donations creates the risk of policy capture, and democracy cannot become a marketplace where public policy is sanctioned to the highest bidder, like, you know, corporate donations. We should also finally decide in this session, I hope we'll get to this issue, and it's a debatable issue of public funding of elections. I know that there's a problem, but we have to start discussing. It's not a magic wand, but perhaps it may reduce the opacity of private money. And finally, I should say that political finance reform cannot be separated from the larger ecosystem of electoral reform. Money power interacts with criminalization, it interacts with issues like weak internal party democracy, internal functioning of parties. It interacts with candidate selection, which is more and more just determined by winnability, and growing commercialization of elections. These are not separate problems, they're all interrelated. So I think, you know, so basically so we're going to discuss about this financial transparency in this session. And I think just to summarize, basically number one, what have we learned after electoral bonds, funding transparency and so on? Secondly, how do we improve transparency in both funding and expenditure? And thirdly, what practical steps can we take to reduce the influence of money power in elections? So may I invite, I'm going to request all the panelists to restrict themselves perhaps to 8 or 10 minutes so that we can have a round of questions also. I know you have to rush to Parliament. So I'll request first Mr. Manish Tewari, and then Mr. Saurabh Bhardwaj after him, and then Dr. Gumma, Rani. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ranade, and my fellow panelists, Mr. Saurabh Bhardwaj, Dr. Gumma, Rani, Dr. Niranjan, Sahoo, and our esteemed panelist who has joined us virtually, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, may I commence by congratulating the ADR for organizing this discussion on the entire gamut of the political system in the country. My apologies, since the no confidence motion in the Lok Sabha has started, so I would have to head back. But let me very briefly try and outline the shape of the elephant by feeling it. Electoral financing is primarily a subset of the larger question of how the political system in India is financed. See, unlike many parts of the West, where political parties are actually platforms to put people into public office or to put people into elected office, India stands on a different footing altogether. Primarily, it's also a consequence of the mass mobilization which led to the independence of India, a unique non-violent struggle. And primarily, I think it was also inspired by the model of the Soviet Union and the East European political parties, which essentially was our ideological tilt at the cusp of independence and many decades after that. So like countries have standing armies, we have standing political parties in our country. So therefore, from the booth level or the village level, right up till the national level, there are political structures across the length and breadth of the country. These political structures in turn have their own mass organizations, which are also extremely broad-based, and really they proliferate from, again, the primary level right up to the apex level. And then, of course, you have an entire ecosystem of organizations outside the formal political ambit who systematically work to sustain, in the case of certain political parties, the entire political movement and the political initiatives that they undertake. And obviously, if you have such standing structures which are so diverse, which are so so organized in a very hierarchical manner, they obviously require to be funded 365 days a year. So, and then, of course, when we talk about elections, we tend to only really focus upon, the upper crust, that is the parliament and the, at best, the Vidhan Sabha elections. But what we tend to forget is that after the 73rd and the 74th Amendment to the Constitution of India, you also have regular elections to the panchayats, to the block samitis, to the zilla parishads, to the municipal councils, to the notified area committees, to the municipal corporations. So therefore, there is an entire hierarchy of elections which political parties fight, at times formally, at times non-formally. So therefore, the scale of political activity, both electoral and non-electoral, is something which I don't think people who even focus on the question of electoral funding with great respect have really been able to wrap their heads around it. At times we get limited to electoral funding because ultimately there is a belief that public policy is only impacted by public representatives who come into office and have the ability to influence this one way or the other. But the submission that I would like to make is that the problem is actually far, far more complicated. So therefore, how do you then ensure that there is transparency of funding at various levels? Because at times, funding is both formal and both non-formal. The electoral bond scheme, which was struck down by the Supreme Court, was in fact a way of trying to formalize political funding, but unfortunately, because of the institutionalized opacity in that scheme, which primarily came from an impulse that corporate India drove, that given the levels of political vendetta which are intrinsic to our politico-social milieu, there was a feeling that till the time it is not protected and it is not insulated by creating layers of opacity, the levels of retribution may then be, or alleged retribution may then be very difficult for corporate India to be able to sustain itself. I think it was a flawed argument right from day one. The person who constructed this premise possibly either did not understand the nature of the Indian political system, or at best did it in a manner whereby it suited certain sections of corporate interests who had incorporated electoral trusts and various other mechanisms in order to try and root their political funding. So the question is, where do we go from here, given the size and scale of the challenge that we confront as a political system? I do not think that there is really a magic bullet for it. Dr. Ranade talked about public funding of democratic processes. I think fundamentally it's a sound idea. But the real challenge is going to be, how do you insulate private funding from then flowing in through the back door or the front door or whichever window is open. So therefore, and we are not alone in really combating this problem. Even if you look at the United States of America, or you look at Europe, there's this problem of super PACs. In fact, in the US, it was actually the US Supreme Court which sanctified these super PACs. So therefore, my own submission, or my own, and I speak for myself, I do not speak for the party that I belong to, my own feeling is that ultimately it will all boil down to a certain amount of maturity, a certain amount of self-regulation, an intrinsic impulse from within the political system to try and be as transparent as possible, because essentially to expect that everything would come out of legislation, there are myriad ways of doing workarounds around legislation. So I do not think legislation really is the magic bullet. The one silver lining is that as the Indian economy gets more and more formalized, the informal channels, hopefully, over a period of time would get less energized. But unfortunately, the data, if you look at, speaks to the contrary. There is more cash in the Indian economic system today than it was pre-demonetization. So therefore, I think it's something close to 38 lakh crores or 40 lakh crores when I last looked at the numbers. So I think there is a need to actually put an informal task force together and to try and break down the problem into what could be the manageable bits, and then start looking at it in a segmented manner to try and find solutions to it. As I earlier said, I don't see a magic bullet, and I think it would be unrealistic to think that legislation can fix it. In my humble estimation, it is only the maturity of the Indian political system and a certain amount of self-regulation by political parties, which may sound difficult at the moment, but this is really the second wave of political reforms that this country requires, that political parties need to be far more transparent in their functioning than what they are. I mean, the first wave was when we gave universal suffrage, and I would really stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tewari. Just before you leave, because you didn't touch on two things. The fact that one easy reform is to insist that the accounts are audited, like all company accounts are. Secondly, that they be timely. And thirdly, that whether, since you said parties need to function more transparently, whether political parties can be brought under RTI. So if you could just quickly, since you have to go, three things.
So essentially, accounts are audited because you submit an audited balance sheet to the Election Commission. Every political party is which is registered with the Election Commission is it's incumbent upon them to really submit an audited balance sheet every year. I mean, that becomes the basis of the tax exemption,
but
which
like
is
CAG kind of rigor,
which is available to well, the C&AG is not a paragon of virtue. I had the good fortune of examining or cross-examining a C&AG for over 43 days about in a joint parliamentary committee about a spurious report that he had given, which shook the foundations of the political system. So with great respect, I don't think that the C&AG is really a very impartial institution. That's been my experience. But yes, there can be more forensic rigor with regard to the audit, and that does not really have to come out from within the come out of a C&AG like process, which, given the levels of institutional capture, may not really be all that impartial. Number two, with regard to bringing political parties under the Right to Information Act, I mean, essentially, look at what the RTI has become today. It's impossible to even get information out of government through the RTI process. I mean, I can tell you as a member of parliament, it's difficult to get information out of parliamentary questions. Uncomfortable questions to the government just get bumped off. While we were coming here, we were fighting with the parliamentary secretariat about some questions of mine which got balloted and bumped off today itself. So therefore, and ultimately, till the time you do not classify a political party as a statutory body, right, which then goes to something far more fundamental, which is the whole doctrine of separation of powers, that legislature really has to be independent. But ultimately, I think if you do manage to get over all these hurdles and you do put political parties within the ambit of the RTI, to whatever extent it might inhibit their or cramp their style, it may not be such a bad idea. And your third question was...
Timeliness, because it's coming, the accounts are coming too late.
Well, I think the Election Commission is fairly stringent. I mean, you really have to file, like every other body has to file its these tax returns within time. So you need to file your return with the tax authorities, give a copy to the Election Commission. It's a different matter that there may be a lag at the end of the Election Commission, that they may not be putting it online on time, but the same time frames which apply to a regular assessee, apply to political parties also. So if there's a lag, that's something which needs to be gone into. But as I said, that this is an elephant, and we are really like blind men who are trying to make out its shape by feeling our way through. But it's a good initiative, and we should actually keep working on this, because ultimately, if we do not fix political financing, then you essentially would have allowed the political system and the democratic system to be hijacked in a manner which may become irretrievable, maybe even a decade down the line.
Thank you. Can we just want to take one or two questions, because he has to leave. Yeah, Ashokji, very brief, please. Please give him a mic quickly. Yeah, brief, yeah.
You know that when we talk about the finances of the political party or the process, it's okay. We often talk about the corporates and the lobbying parts, but we have hardly talking about the voters. So my question is, what roles of the voters do you see in addressing the opacity and bringing transparency to the electoral finances?
Well, that is another aspect. Large number of people actually, crowd fund their political activity also these days. So therefore, a voter is not only a passive participant in terms of casting a vote every 5 years, but thanks to, technology which is available today, I am aware of a large number of people at the local level who actually crowd fund their political activities. So that is another aspect which we really haven't looked at. So ultimately, it's not just that voters, are impulses or catalysts which drive or should be driving transparency. I think it is also important to look at the role of the electors in the process of funding elections. And that's an aspect which is a very interesting aspect which has not been looked at till today.
Anybody else? Yeah, Vipul.
Hi, I'm Vipul Mudgal. I work for Common Cause in ADR. Manish, you are one of the most articulate politicians and parliamentarians. I think there's a bit of vagueness in your answers. The internal maturity, what was it? The self-regulation, internal impulse. I think we are looking for something more forthright. You've stayed in politics long enough. Please tell us very candidly, what do you think needs to be done? Can you spell it out?
Well, after spending, close to 4.5 decades doing this and thinking about it very carefully, the answers that I gave you were very realistic answers because, the magic bullet that you're looking for, unfortunately, doesn't exist. I wish it would have existed. I wish there was a way that everything could be transparent, above board, and completely kosher, right? But when you have a $4 trillion non-formal economy that supports a $4 trillion formal economy, and then to expect that your political system would entirely become a formally funded process, with great respect, it's not happening. Till the time you do not formalize your economy completely, to expect that the political system, will function in a completely formal manner, for the lack of a better word, it's not going to happen. So therefore, as financial inclusion increases, as the formalization of the economy becomes all the more better, as channels of funding through what you call cash get more and more restricted or become, automatically restrictive over a period of time, you will see, this happening. But the kind of solutions that we often, look at, for example, with great respect to the Supreme Court, they struck down the electoral bonds, right, before the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. So then how were the 2024 Lok Sabha elections funded? Or for that matter, how have every election after that been funded? And so I think the starting point of any honest conversation is to see the ecosystem that we are operating in and then try and find reasonable fixes, which may sound incremental at this point in time, but in my humble estimation, that's the way forward.
Just last comment. In Maharashtra, there are some villages which said, each voter said, each family household said, my vote is not for sale. Mera vote bikaw nahi hai. Main mera vote nahi bechunga or bechengi. So, it's the other side, the money influence of money power on elections and democracy. This is the other side, that it has become so routine that, cash distribution, there are election commission conducts raids, and only a minuscule portion is able. So that's also a big part of the money power.
But you see, as someone who's now fought before Lok Sabha elections, I can tell you that this is very minuscule. And essentially, there is no guarantee that who takes your money actually votes for you. So therefore, these are fantasies and fallacies which certain politicians and political parties love to belabor under, right? They do try and find ways around it. But eventually, in my estimation, a large part of the Indian electorate is really very consensuous, above board, and they do apply their minds when they exercise their franchise. Before I get thrown out, allow me to leave.
Thank you, Mr. Tewari.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Thank you. So, we'll go next to Dr. Gumma Thanuja. Do you have to also go to Parliament? So, can I request Mrs. Saurabh to go after her? Because, yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
So, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you so much. It's a privilege for me to attend in such a discussion because I'm the one of the youngest MPs from Lok Sabha, and let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Gumma Thanuja Rani. I completed my medicine, and I came to the political family, and by the God's grace, and with my party president, I got this opportunity to serve the people. So, before starting my speech, or before starting my discussion, I would like to thank to my party president and the God to giving me this opportunity. So today, rebuilding transparency in political finance post-electoral bonds. This topic will be initiated and discussed with all the speakers. But today, I would like to bring to your all notice that what happened in the state of Andhra Pradesh during the election time. So it is very important to maintain the transparency from the beginning to the end of the elections and after the election also. But during the election time in 2024, May 13th, the election happened in Andhra Pradesh. What the election commission was done in Andhra Pradesh, I just want to expose in front of you. So, so election was done in a one day. So the same day, May 13th, the election was done. By the end of the day, by 5 o'clock, the election commission released the press release that by the May 13th, 8 p.m., the total polling was, and the total voter turnover is 62.84%. And from 8 p.m. to 11:45 p.m., another press release by the election commission stating that the voter turnover is 76.50. It's very interesting, of course. And after 4 days later, on May 17th, the election commission again released a press note that after calculating everything, ballot votings, this remaining voting and through voter turnover, it is 81.79%. So here I just want to expose what the election commission was done in election of Andhra Pradesh. In the morning from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., the polling is only 68.04%. From 7 a.m. to evening 5 p.m. It means for 1 hour, it is 6.8% of polling was noted. From 8 p.m., the ED has given the press release that by the 8 p.m., it was 68.12% of the polling was done. That means from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., it is only 0.8% of the polling was done. you can see here from the morning 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. it's 6.8% from per 1 hour. But after that, from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. for 3 hours of duration, it's only 0.8% of polling was done. By the end of the day, 11:45, another press release was released by the election commission, is that by 11:45 it is 76.50. From 11 p.m. to from night 11:45 to next day morning 2 a.m. in 3,500 polling booths, the voting was 4.16% was done. How can people come at the midnight from 11:45 to 2 a.m.? How the people will come and poll in booths that it increased to 4.14%? How it is possible? So that means from 11 p.m. to next day morning 2 p.m. in 3,500 polling booths, it was recorded that 17,19,482 members voted. How it is possible? It is humanly possible. And in these regards, we can say that in individual polling booth, 419 members are voted. So here is my question, that something happened in recent elections. So I wish in the coming elections or in the coming future that India should follow the other countries where the EVMs are not encouraged and EVMs are banned, just like Netherlands, France, US, and many developed countries like they are following the ballot votes only. And here I just wanted to conclude here that the current status of the transparency in political funding, the Indian political finance system is often described not transparent, but several disclosure frameworks already exist. The political parties must submit annual audited accounts and contributions report to the Election Commission of India, including the details of donation, about 20,000. The parties also file financial statement with the Income Tax Department as a condition for the maintaining tax exemptions under the Income Tax Act. And here I just wanted to tell that public funding of elections and opportunities and complexities. Here election expenditures in India is extremely high. The Election Commission of India currently prescribes the expenditure limit for the candidates who are allowing the member of parliament contesting the Lok Sabha to spend 95 lakhs, while the candidates contesting the Legislative Assembly of elections must spend between 28 to 40 lakhs, depending on the state. Introducing public funding in the system with such large-scale electoral expenditures raises the several practical challenges. And with this, I can conclude, because the same thing happens with me also, like my co-member, and I need to leave to Parliament right now.
Yeah, Dr. Kumar, just a couple of questions. Would your party support bringing political parties under RTI?
Yes, sir.
Your party supports that?
Yes, sir.
And secondly, question is about, do you think there should be a cap on corporate donations? Right now, corporates are not supposed to disclose fully which political party they are. So there is no cap, and so what is, would you support a cap on donations from corporate or companies?
Yes, sir. We support the cap of companies to donate to the political parties.
And whether there should be more transparency about their funding.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think if anybody has any quick questions for Dr. Yeah, Ashok, please. Yeah. Please give him a mic.
I wrote this question much before that she started.
Yeah, okay.
And because I said that you come from the Araku, which is a scheduled tribe representation. So my question is, that within a political party, how does finances limit the chances of good candidates of the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes?
Sir, come again.
within a political system or the political party, any party, just link with yourself also, that how does the finances of candidate limit the chances for the good candidate of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe? If
Is it that money plays a role in you getting a ticket?
no, not you.
No.
I'm just trying to make it
No,
simpler.
I'm saying that if there is a candidate, for, say, a good candidate from the scheduled caste or scheduled tribe, what will be his chances to get a ticket or contest election if he doesn't have
Sir,
money?
I'll answer to your question. Particularly tribal area is not just like the other places of India, not only in India but in the state. It is not just like the normal, because our tribal will have the particular acts, particular rules, and we are somehow now we are educating and we are coming out and exposing to the society or the world. So here what you told, of course the financial system may help the candidates, but we internally choose the person who is correct and who can do some work, or who can do better in my constituency, not only in my constituency, in the tribal area.
Okay, anyway, I think you have to go, so
Yes, sir.
thank you, Dr. Gumma Rani.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Thank you.
this is one of those days where everybody is rushing to Parliament, so, but Mr. Saurabh Bhardwaj.
Thank you. Thank you so much. एक तो ADR जो काम करता है वो हम चुनाव से, हमारे प्रजातंत्र से संबंधित कोई भी चीज़ गूगल पे सर्च करें तो उसका रिजल्ट ADR के नाम से ही आता है, और कोई संस्था है ही नहीं जो इसका रिकॉर्ड रख रही है कि कौन लोग चुनाव लड़ रहे हैं, किसके पास पैसा है, किसके पास कितने मुकदमे हैं, कोई और रख ही नहीं रहा है, रिकॉर्ड आप ही रख रहे हैं। तो मुझे लगता है कि इलेक्शन कमीशन का ज़्यादातर काम तो ADR कर रही है। इलेक्शन कमीशन जो काम कर रहा है वो सबको पता है, तो ये एक बहुत बड़ी बात है। मैं कई बार अखबार पढ़ता हूँ, देखता हूँ कि ये चीज़ है, इसमें किसी को मुकदमा करना चाहिए। हम सिर्फ सोचते हैं कि इसमें किसी को करना चाहिए, किसको करना चाहिए वो हमें नहीं पता, क्योंकि हमारे पास तो अब इतनी रिसोर्सेज नहीं है कि हम वकील ढूंढें, इसके ऊपर रिसर्च करें। मगर जब जब ऐसा दिमाग में आता है कि इसके ऊपर किसी को कोर्ट जाना चाहिए, मुझे लगता है कि उसमें लगभग 70-80% टाइम ADR जो है कोर्ट में जाता है। ये अपने आप में बहुत बड़ी बात है। रिसर्च करना, डेटा होना, वकील ढूंढना, वकील को इतना भरोसा होना चाहिए कि ADR जो है और किसी काम के लिए मुझे नहीं भेज रही कोर्ट में, ये वाकई में ही जो है असली में इन लोगों को चिंता है, इसलिए आपके पास अच्छे वकील आ जाते हैं, आपका मुकदमा जो है हाई कोर्ट, सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक चलता है, कई बार अच्छे जजमेंट भी आ जाते हैं। तो मैं यहाँ जब आया तो मैं यही सोच रहा था कि कितना मुश्किल होगा आप लोगों के लिए, एक ऐसी लड़ाई को आप लड़ रहे हैं जिसके अंदर पता नहीं ये लड़ाई कब तक आप लोग लड़ते रहेंगे, और कितने दबाव के अंदर आप लोगों को काम करना होता होगा। कौन ऐसे वीर लोग होंगे, योद्धा होंगे जो आपको फंड दे रहे होंगे, क्योंकि हमें तो लोगों ने फंड देना बंद कर दिया है। आपको वो कौन लोग हैं जो फंड दे रहे हैं, वो भी बहुत वीर होंगे, क्योंकि उनके ऊपर भी पता नहीं कितनी इंक्वायरी होंगी, उनके भी खाते वातों की जांच कई बार हो गई होगी कि ये ADR को फंड दे रहे हैं। और जब हम इलेक्टोरल फंडिंग की बात करते हैं तो अब मामला सिर्फ उस फंडिंग का नहीं है कि जो इलेक्टोरल प्रोसेस के अंदर फंड पार्टियां खर्च करती हैं, वो तो वो फंड है जो आपको आंखों से दिख रहा है। एक कंटिन्यूअस इलेक्टोरल फंडिंग 24/7 आज जो है हमारी सोसाइटी में चल रही है। ये जो आप न्यूज़ देख रहे हैं ये सब इलेक्शनियरिंग का ही एक हिस्सा है। ये सारा का सारा जो न्यूज़ लगभग 80-90% जो चैनल दिखाते हैं, जो इसके अंदर टीवी डिबेट्स होती हैं, जो हेडलाइन मैनेजमेंट होती है, जो अखबार के अंदर कौन सी खबर बड़ी छपेगी, कौन सी छोटी छपेगी, कौन सी नहीं छपेगी, ये सब इलेक्शनियरिंग का ही हिस्सा है और इसके अंदर कंटिन्यूसली फंडिंग हो रही है। कहीं पे सरकारों के माध्यम से फंडिंग हो रही है, कहीं पे कॉरपोरेट के माध्यम से फंडिंग हो रही है, कहीं पे अंडर द टेबल फंडिंग हो रही है, मगर वो लगातार वो फंडिंग चल रही है। उसके अलावा जो सोशल मीडिया पे अब हम देख रहे हैं, जो इन्फ्लुएंसर्स आ गए हैं बहुत सारे, जिनके मिलियंस की फॉलोइंग है, वो भी अब जो है एक इलेक्शनियरिंग का ही तरीका है कि आप कुछ लिखते हैं, उसके नीचे कुछ लोग पेड हैं। मैं एक ट्वीट करता हूं, मुझे पता है वो 25 लोग जो तुरंत सबसे पहले, मैं भी अपना ट्वीट लिखने के बाद दोबारा नहीं पढ़ रहा हूँगा, वो तुरंत पढ़ के उसके ऊपर रिस्पॉन्ड करते हैं 25 लोग। वही मैंने एक दिन सोचा कि आज इन सबको ब्लॉक कर देता हूँ, उन 25 को मैंने ब्लॉक किया, अगले दिन वो 25 नए नाम से आ गए। उनका ट्विटर अकाउंट खोल के देखो ये कब क्रिएट हुए हैं, मैंने पिछले महीने उनको ब्लॉक किया, तो वो सब 25 के 25 जो है फरवरी 2026 में अवतरित हुए ट्विटर पे। मैं उनको अब ब्लॉक कर दूंगा तो फिर दिखेगा कि ये सब मार्च में अवतरित हुए। तो ये लोग पहले थे ही नहीं सृष्टि में, ये ट्विटर पे ही नहीं थे, ये तुरंत अवतरित हुए फरवरी में। और इनकी ट्विटर टाइमलाइन देखो, ये क्या कर रहे हैं, ये सिर्फ मुझे या मेरे जैसे कुछ लोगों को सिर्फ कमेंट करते हैं, इनका कोई अपनी चीज़ नहीं डालते, ना कुछ देखते, ये सिर्फ जो है हमारे कमेंट पे। तो ये क्यों कर रहे हैं? किसी ने कोई बात लिखी, मैंने कोई बात लिखी, लोगों को थोड़ा इंटरेस्ट रहता है, यार इस पे कमेंट देखते हैं लोग क्या सोच रहे हैं, अरे ये तो 25 के 25 लोग गाली दे रहे हैं इसको। तो आपको लगातार मैनिपुलेट करने की कोशिश की जा रही है। अब जब से इतनी देर से बात हो रही थी, मैं सोच रहा था इस फंडिंग की उत्पत्ति कहाँ से है। देखिए, सारी की सारी फंडिंग की उत्पत्ति मोटे तौर पे बड़े बड़े कॉरपोरेट घरानों से है। और ये फंडिंग इसलिए है क्योंकि उनको इस देश के नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज को लूटना है, और वो लूट तभी होगी जब उनके मर्जी की पार्टी सत्ता में आएगी। इसलिए ये पैसे की फंडिंग लगातार चल रही है। मुझे याद है 1970 में 1980 में जो फिल्में बनती थी, अगर आपको ध्यान हो, जिसमें मनोज कुमार हीरो हुआ करते थे, उसके अंदर जो विलन दिखाया जाता था फिल्मों के अंदर, वो ज्यादातर कोई एक बहुत बड़ा व्यापारी दिखाया जाता था। आप याद करिए कि ये साहब ये बहुत बड़े व्यापारी हैं और ये देश को लूटने के लिए तैयार हैं, काला बाजारी करके लूटेंगे, सीमेंट की होर्डिंग करके लूटेंगे, कोई ना कोई एक बड़ा बिजनेस अंपायर खड़ा करके ये देश के गरीबों को लूटना चाहते हैं ये बड़े बड़े व्यापारी उस वक्त। आज भी ऐसा ही है, आज भी कुछ बड़े बड़े व्यापारी ही देश के गरीब लोगों को, देश के संसाधनों को लूटना चाहते हैं। मगर पिछले 20 सालों में, या कहें पिछले 15 सालों में तो खास तौर पे इसके ऊपर बहुत फंडिंग हुई है। बड़े बड़े व्यापारियों को जहां पर विलन बताया जाता था, मैं मानता हूं सब विलन नहीं होंगे, कुछ लोग अच्छे भी होंगे, मगर मुख्यतः जैसे बड़े बड़े व्यापारियों को विलन बताया जाता था, उनको धीरे 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 भगवान के आसपास का दर्जा हमारे मीडिया ने, हमारी साइकोलॉजी को धीरे धीरे बदल के किया। क्यों किया? क्योंकि अमेरिका भी ऐसे ही कर रहा है, कैपिटलिस्ट सोसाइटी में ऐसा किया जाता है। भाई क्यों है इतने महान? ये सर इसलिए महान है क्योंकि ये नौकरी दे रहे हैं। अच्छा, तो नौकरी क्या ये चैरिटी के लिए दे रहे हैं? नौकरी इनको काम धंधा चलाना है इसलिए नौकरी दे रहे हैं। मगर इसको ऐसा दिखाया जाए, नहीं, कॉर्पोरेट जो है वो एंजल है, वो भगवान से बिल्कुल थोड़ा सा नीचे है, क्योंकि यही अगर पनपेंगे तो देश के अंदर नौकरियां होंगी, देश के अंदर नौकरियां होंगी तो देश में समृद्धि आएगी, वरना तो सब जो है लड़ मर के मर जाएंगे, खत्म हो जाएंगे। तो इन सबको इतना महान दिखाया गया। क्यों महान दिखाया गया? ताकि जो लोग इनसे पैसा लें और सरकारें बनाएं, सत्ता में आए, वो भी महान कहलाएं। वरना आप उनके ऊपर उंगली उठाने लगते कि यार ये लोग तो सब लूटने पाटने के लिए आए हुए हैं, और ये राजनीतिक दल इन लुटेरों से पैसा ले रहे हैं, इन राजनीतिक दलों को ये लुटेरे जो है फंड कर रहे हैं, तो ये भी लुटेरे हैं। नहीं, इसलिए आप सबकी, हम सबकी साइकोलॉजी को धीरे 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 फाइन ट्यून करके अखबारों ने, बिजनेस मैगजीन्स ने, टीवी ने, बड़े बड़े सेलिब्रिटीज़ ने हमारा पूरा का पूरा माइंडसेट बदल दिया, और हमें यही नहीं समझ में आ रहा कि एक्चुअली देश के नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज का दुश्मन है कौन। ये कुछ बड़े बड़े कॉरपोरेट घराने ही हैं दुश्मन। और इन लोगों के यहाँ मैंने तो कई जगह काम किया है, ऐसा नहीं है कि नौकरी इसलिए दे रहे हैं क्योंकि नौकरी देना चाहते हैं। हर बड़ी कॉरपोरेट कंपनी लगातार अपनी मैनेजमेंट पर इस काम पे लगी रहती है कि ये कोशिश करो कि कम कैसे हो जाए। अगर यहां 5 लाख लोग काम कर रहे हैं तो तुम्हारा टारगेट है कि अगले साल 4 लाख कैसे कर सकते हैं, 3 लाख कैसे कर सकते हैं। ये भाई मैं भी अपने यहां एक टीम चलाता था, मेरे यहां 14 थे, तो मेरे ऊपर यही प्रेशर होता था कि 14 नहीं 10 से कैसे हो सकता है काम। तो कोई भी बड़ा कॉरपोरेट एम्प्लॉयमेंट देना उसका जो है सिद्धांत नहीं है, वो एक बाय प्रोडक्ट है कि वो एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट होगी, क्योंकि उसको तो काम करना ही। और अब जो मनी की, पैसे की पावर के अंदर जो फर्क आया है, मैंने देखा जब मैंने पहली बार 2013 में चुनाव लड़ा तो इतना ज्यादा पैसे की जरूरत नहीं थी। आप दिल्ली में एमएलए का चुनाव आराम से लड़ सकते थे। मैं कह सकता हूं कि एक मिडिल क्लास आदमी भी अगर चाहे तो दिल्ली के अंदर चुनाव अपने पैसों से लड़के जीत सकता था, इतना मुश्किल नहीं था। मगर ये जो 2025 में जो हमने दिल्ली का चुनाव देखा, क्योंकि मैंने तो फर्स्ट हैंड देखा, उसके अंदर जो पैसे की ताकत हमने देखी वो पहले नहीं थी। मैं सिर्फ एक उदाहरण के लिए आपको एक ये मैं आपके लिए एक वो लेके आया हूँ। ये जो है एक कार्ड है, ये केस चल रहा है हाई कोर्ट के अंदर। मनजिंदर सिंह सिरसा जो हमारे आज दिल्ली सरकार के अंदर मंत्री हैं, उन्होंने चुनाव जीतने के लिए चुनाव के समय इस तरीके के कार्ड बांटे, और इसी तरीके के कार्ड आपने देखा होगा प्रवेश साहिब सिंह वर्मा ने भी बांटे, वो भी टीवी पे काफी जो है सोशल मीडिया वगैरह के अंदर चला। और कई एमएलएज जो चुनाव लड़ रहे थे भारतीय जनता पार्टी की तरफ से, उन्होंने ये वाले कार्ड बांटे और खुल्लम खुल्ला बांटे। उन्होंने क्या कहा कि जी हमारी एक संस्था है और हमारी संस्था हर औरत को हर महीने 1000 रुपए देगी, और दिसंबर में दिए और जनवरी में दिए। 8 फरवरी का चुनाव था, और यह कहा कि भाई अगर मैं जीत गया तो 5 साल तक दूंगा। ये बाकायदा फोटो है इनकी, सबका साथ सबका विकास। इसके ऊपर 1000 रुपए 28/12/2024 जनवरी पेड, मतलब जनवरी के दे दिए दिसंबर में, और यहां पे आके साइन कर दिए। तो भाई किसी को कार्ड मिल गया, किसी को लगा ये तो लॉटरी लग गई। 5 साल तक सिरसा जी के घर जाएंगे और 1000 रुपए ठह लेके आएंगे। इससे अच्छा क्या हो सकता है। और मिलेंगे तभी जब ये जीतेंगे, वरना नहीं मिलेंगे। यही प्रवेश वर्मा ने कहा कि मिलेंगे तभी जब मैं जीत जाऊंगा, वरना नहीं दूंगा। और बेशर्मी देखिए, जीतने के बाद भी देना बंद कर दिया। कर लो क्या करोगे। दिया नहीं है फरवरी का, उसमें भी बेईमानी, मतलब चोरी में भी बेईमानी। हम सुनते थे कि जी बेईमानों के भी अपने उसूल होते हैं, इनके वो भी उसूल नहीं थे। तो आप सोचिए जब ये राजधानी के अंदर हो रहा है, बाकायदा कार्ड बना के, ठप्पा लगा के, आधार कार्ड दे के हुआ। और भी कई कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी है वहां पे, जैसे तिवारी जी बता के गए, वो बिल्कुल ठीक बता रहे थे कि कई बार क्या होता है कि पैसा दिया, उसकी भी गारंटी नहीं होती कि ये वोट मिलेगा नहीं मिलेगा। तो उसके लिए भी राजनीतिक दलों ने सारे काम ढूंढ लिए हैं। ऐसा मत सोचो कि वो बेवकूफ है। अगर राजनीतिक दल को ये पता चल गया कि भाई ये झुग्गी झोंपड़ी है, या ये फला मोहल्ला है, फला कम्युनिटी का है, और ये हमें वोट नहीं देते, ये तो आम आदमी पार्टी को वोट देते हैं, अब मैं इनको 1-1000 रुपए दे दूं, मगर इनकी गारंटी नहीं है अंदर जाके किसे वोट दे देंगे। तो इससे भी अच्छा तरीका है, मैं इन्हें 1-1000 रुपए इस चीज का ले दूंगा कि तुम वोट ही नहीं दोगे। भाई अगर आम आदमी पार्टी का वोटर, जो मुझे आइडेंटिफाइड है आम आदमी पार्टी का वोटर है, मैं उसको 1000 रुपए देके ये इंश्योर कर लूं कि वो वोट ही ना देने जाए, जो कि आसान है इंश्योर करना, तो मेरा काम तो बन गया। तो मैंने क्या किया कि तुम 1000 रुपए लो, उंगली दिखाओ निशान, उंगली दिखाओ निशान। तो आपने पूरे के पूरे मोहल्लों के अंदर जितने भी लोग वोटर थे उन सब की उंगलियों के ऊपर वोट का निशान लगा के उनको 1000 2,000 जो भी जैसा मिला वैसा दे दिया। इलेक्शन से एक दिन पहले आपने पूरे इलाकों में लाइन से बसें लगा दी कि अगर हिंदू हो तो तुम खाटू श्याम जा रहे हो, और अगर तुम मुसलमान हो तो तुम अजमेर शरीफ जा रहे हो, पैसे लो और बस में बैठो। भेज दिया अजमेर शरीफ, खाटू श्याम जी भेज दिए। लाइव किया, हमारे जो लोग चुनाव लड़ रहे थे लाइव दिखाया उन्होंने फेसबुक पे कि साहब देखो बवाना में हमारे जो चुनाव लड़ रहे थे जय भगवान उपकार, उन्होंने लाइव दिखाया फेसबुक पे, साहब देखिए 150 बसें खड़ी हुई हैं लाइन से, सबको अजमेर शरीफ ले जा रहे हैं। कहेंगे नहीं चुनाव से पहले आ जाएंगे, सुबह तक आ जाएंगे, ऐसे करके ले गए और फिर वहीं पर बैठा दिया। कैसे आएगा गरीब आदमी वहां से, चुनाव के अगले दिन ही आए। तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि अब आप पूछेंगे जी सॉल्यूशन क्या है। मेरा मानना यह है कि सॉल्यूशन ये है कि जो लूटपाट की जो गंगोत्री है वो ये बड़े बड़े कुछ कॉरपोरेट घराने हैं, मैं सबको नहीं कहता मगर कुछ तो हैं जो सबको मालूम है। जब तक इनकी डेमोनाइजेशन नहीं होगी, जब तक ये बताया नहीं जाएगा समाज में कि यही हैं सबसे बड़े विलन, यही हैं सबसे बड़े राक्षस दैत्य जो आपके इस देश को बर्बाद करने पे तुले हुए हैं, तब तक कुछ नहीं होगा। आपको सबसे पहले बताना पड़ेगा कि सारी लूटपाट ये करना चाहते हैं, और फिर इस लूटपाट में जो इनके आसपास हैं वो इनके लूटपाट करने के हथियार हैं। तो धीरे धीरे समाज के अंदर इसको लेके समझ बनेगी, इसको लेके नैतिक जागरूकता आएगी, और फिर लोग उन लोगों से दूरी बनाने लगेंगे। फिर लोग इस बात को समझने लगेंगे कि मीडिया भी जो है वो एक कॉरपोरेट फंडिंग का ही एक हिस्सा है, सोशल मीडिया भी जो है उस तरीके से मैनेज हो रहा है, और फिर जाके जो है धीरे धीरे मुझे लगता है फ़र्क आएगा। आरटीआई के अंदर बिल्कुल आ जाना चाहिए, जो ऑडिटिंग आप चाहें वो कर लेनी चाहिए। मगर समस्या क्या है कि ऑडिटिंग कौन करेगा? ज्ञानेश कुमार ऑडिटिंग करेंगे बीजेपी की? ये संभव है? तो अब इंस्टीट्यूशंस जो है इतने कमज़ोर कर दिए गए हैं देश के अंदर, चाहे वो इलेक्शन कमीशन हो, चाहे वो ईडी हो, चाहे वो सीबीआई हो, फॉर दैट मैटर कई बार कोर्ट्स के अंदर भी हम देखते हैं कि एक हाई कोर्ट के जज अगर कोई फैसला दे दें जो सरकार को पसंद नहीं, जैसे जस्टिस मुरलीधर ने दिया था, रातों रात उनको ट्रांसफर कर दिया गया। कई जगह लोअर कोर्ट के अंदर हमने देखा कुछ जजेस ने ऐसा ऑर्डर दे दिया जो किसी बड़े कॉर्पोरेट हाउस के खिलाफ है, अगले दिन ट्रांसफर, ओपनली ट्रांसफर है। मगर क्या है कि ये खबरें आप तक जैसे लोगों तक पहुंच जाती हैं मगर जनता तक नहीं पहुंच रही। जनता तक क्यों नहीं पहुंच रही? क्योंकि मीडिया नहीं पहुंचा रहा। मीडिया क्यों नहीं पहुंचा रहा? क्योंकि वो सब उन कॉर्पोरेट हाउसेस के हाथ में है। तो कुल मिला के घूम फिर के आप उन कॉर्पोरेट हाउसेस पे ही जो है आपकी बॉल रुकेगी, गेंद रुकेगी, वहीं से जो है अपनी लड़ाई की शुरुआत हमें करनी चाहिए। आप लोग जो कर रहे हैं वो बहुत बढ़िया काम है। आप लोग कोर्ट से आ रहे हैं, कोर्ट से कुछ ना कुछ अच्छे ऑर्डर आपको मिल जाते हैं, कभी कभी कई बार नहीं भी मिलते, मगर कभी कभी तो मिलते ही हैं। तो आप लोग अपनी लड़ाई जो है जारी रखिए, और हमारी तरफ से आप सब लोगों को बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं।
सौरभ जी थैंक यू। आपको जाना है कि आप रुक सकते हैं?
सर मेरी ना 2 बजे की प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस है।
अच्छा, तो एक 2-4
तो हाँ,
ब्रीफ क्वेश्चन। हाँ, पीछे जो बताइए आप, प्लीज बी ब्रीफ इन योर क्वेश्चन।
Hello sir. So my name is Sumit Kashyap and I am a student of University of Delhi, Dayal Singh College. And sir, as you said that कि institutions weak हुए हैं, बट हमारे प्रोफेसर ने पढ़ा है कि कुछ इंस्टीट्यूशन बहुत स्ट्रांग हुए हैं, जिसमें सबसे पहले नाम उन्होंने लिया था इलेक्शन कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया। तो सर उन्होंने ये एक्सप्लेनेशन दिया कि बाकी कंट्रीज़ में जैसे कि पाकिस्तान एंड ऑल हो गया, इलेक्शन जो है वो रेगुलर बेसिस पे नहीं हो पाते या कुछ डिस्क्रिपेंसीज आ जाती हैं, बट इंडिया में ऐसा कभी भी नहीं हुआ है, ठीक है। और उन्होंने एक एग्जांपल दिया था कि अगर वोट चोरीज हो रही हैं तो आपको 45 दिन के अंदर उसमें वर्डिक्ट वगैरह दे के आपको उसमें केस करना चाहिए था। 45 दिन के अंदर आपको रिपोर्ट आती, बट किसी पार्टी ने ऐसा नहीं किया।
मैंने ज्ञानेश कुमार को चिट्ठी लिखी और मैंने कहा कि नई दिल्ली विधानसभा के अंदर वोटों की चोरी हुई, उसकी उस समय की मुख्यमंत्री आतिशी ने लिखित कंप्लेंट की। उस जगह जो कैंडिडेट लड़ रहे थे अरविंद केजरीवाल, उन्होंने कंप्लेंट लिखी, और हमने ये दिखाया कि जो लोग जीवित थे और उसी एड्रेस पे रह रहे थे उनके वोट काटे गए। और फिर हमने आरटीआई लगाई उसके ऊपर, और आरटीआई का कोई जवाब नहीं आया। उसमें लिखा कि जांच जारी है, जांच जारी है, कोई एफआईआर दर्ज हुई, जांच जारी है, सब कुछ जारी है। फिर मैंने ज्ञानेश कुमार जी के लिए प्रेस वार्ता की कि भाई अगर आपको चाहिए, राहुल गांधी तो नहीं दे रहे, मैं आपको एफिडेविट दे दूंगा, जो कुछ मैं कह रहा हूँ वो मुझे एफिडेविट दे दूंगा, आप मुझे बताओ कब देना है। उनको एफिडेविट राहुल गांधी से चाहिए, क्योंकि राहुल गांधी लिख के देंगे नहीं। क्यों नहीं लिख के देंगे? वो बेचारे बड़े नेता हैं, उनको वो छोटे मोटे मामले में, झूठा एफिडेविट के मामले में जेल वेल भेज देंगे, डिस्क्वालीफाई कर देंगे। हमें कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, हमसे उन्हें चाहिए नहीं। आप इस बात को समझो।
कोई ऐसी क्लैरिफिकेशन या फिर ऐसा कुछ नोटिस एंड ऑल जो भी सोशल मीडिया पे एंड लाइक कोई क्लियर क्लैरिफिकेशन तो आया नहीं इसके ऊपर?
आपका सवाल क्या है? सवाल क्या है?
सवाल ये है कि सर इंस्टीट्यूशंस वीक हुए हैं या फिर स्ट्रांग हुए हैं?
ज्ञानेश कुमार जी स्ट्रांग हुए हैं, उनके दोनों बेटियां आईएएस हैं, उनके दोनों दामाद आईएएस हैं, वो स्ट्रांग हो गए हैं, इंस्टीट्यूशन वीक हो गया।
अच्छा, कोई और सवाल?
ओके सर, गॉट इट।
फाइनेंशियल ट्रांसपेरेंसी का अगर कोई सवाल है हाँ, ये पूछिए जल्दी।
सर आपने, माई सेल्फ अमन फ्रॉम दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी लॉ फैकल्टी, तो आपने सर कॉर्पोरेट्स को लेकर के बोला, तो सर जब कॉर्पोरेट्स फाइनेंस करते हैं तो इंडिविजुअली ऐसा तो नहीं है कि वो एक ही पार्टी को करते हैं, वो तो हर पार्टीज को मे बी प्रोपोर्शनेटली कोई हायर हो सकता है, कोई लोअर हो सकता है। तो फिर अभी मान लीजिए हम अगर अपोजिशन पार्टी में रहते हैं तो मे बी वी आर टारगेटिंग वन और अदर, बट हम जब खुद जाते हैं अगर वो हमें फाइनेंस करने लगते हैं,
अरे तभी तो कांग्रेस उनको अपोज नहीं करती।
नहीं सौरभ जी, मैं इस सवाल को थोड़ा ऐड करता हूँ। विल यू सपोर्ट सम लिमिट ऑन कॉर्पोरेट डोनेशंस? इनका सवाल है कि सब कॉर्पोरेट्स आर डोनेटिंग टू एवरी पार्टी, कॉन्सेंट्रेशन तो हो रहा है, लेकिन देखिए ऐसा कोई सुझाव है कि लिमिट कर लें
वगैरह लग जाए तो एक बड़ा अच्छा है, बट क्या ना ये 2 नंबर का खेल करना शुरू कर देंगे, बड़े बदमाश लोग हैं। होना चाहिए लिमिट वगैरह होना चाहिए, बट दिस इज ऑल ऑल थ्योरी। ये लोग इस स्तर पे लोग ये हैं कि आप इनको कहाँ तक पकड़ोगे? सब कुछ इनका देखिए क्या है ना, दरोगा भी यही है, इलेक्शन कमीशन भी यही है, सरकार भी यही है, कॉर्पोरेट भी यही है, सब कुछ इनके पास है। मगर फिर भी अगर लिमिट लग जाए तो बहुत अच्छी बात है।
सर पर जब ये पार्टीज खुद पावर में आ जाती है तो ये सपोर्ट करती हैं, वो भी तो नहीं। फिर अगर अभी लग रहा है कि वो टारगेट कर रही है।
आपकी बात ठीक कह रहे हैं। अब देखिए जैसे 2025 में चुनाव था, हम पावर में थे। आप एडीआर की रिपोर्ट खोल के देखो, किसको कितनी डोनेशन मिली। बीजेपी को 86 करोड़, कांग्रेस को 67 करोड़, जिसका एक भी एमएलए नहीं आ रहा ना इस बार आया, और हमें 16 करोड़। देखो कॉर्पोरेट को भी मालूम है कौन उनका काम करने के लिए आएगा, और बाकी पार्टियों का ज्यादातर कैश था। हमारा मुझे लग रहा है कि शायद 2000 रुपए की एक कैश डोनेशन थी, बाकी सब वाइट था हमारा।
ठीक है सर, थैंक यू।
आप पूछिए।
नहीं सौरभ जी यहाँ पे है, तो मेरा एक जस्ट आउट ऑफ क्यूरियोसिटी, आम आदमी पार्टी जब पहली बार जीत के आया तो वन गुड थिंग दे हैड एक्चुअली डन विच मेनी अदर पार्टी also were thinking about it, the crowdfunding, and every donation also was put in the public key. So why did you actually stop it?
तो मैं आपको इसके बारे में बड़ा ओपनली बताता हूँ, मगर इसको आप मेरी पार्टी का बयान ना समझें, मेरा बयान समझें इसको। देखिए ये लोग इतने बदमाश हैं कि जो आदमी आम आदमी पार्टी को पैसा दे रहा है उसका हमने नाम डाल दिया, ठीक है, ये उसको ढूंढना शुरू कर देते हैं। और जाहिर सी बात है अगर कोई वो हमें 1 करोड़ रुपए दे रहा है तो वो 20-25 करोड़ का आदमी होगा, तो उसके पीछे ये लोग अलग अलग तरीके से ये नोटिस वो नोटिस, उसका छज्जा तोड़ दो, उसका मतलब ये लोग किसी भी हद तक जो है जा सकते हैं। दूसरा मेरे दिमाग में और भी कुछ था, मैं जब पहला चुनाव लड़ा तो लोगों ने आके चेक दिए, मुझे खुल्लम खुल्ला दिए, फोटो खिंचाए। मैं जब ये वाला चुनाव लड़ा, जबकि मैं 3 बार एमएलए रह चुका था, मैं मंत्री था, लोग कहते थे कैश ले लो, कैश ले लो, चेक नहीं देंगे। क्यों नहीं देंगे? कह रहे यार हम ना एक्सपोज हो जाएंगे, हमारे पीछे पड़ जाएंगे। लोग इतना डरते हैं इन लोगों से। और देखिए हमारा जैसा आदमी इसलिए नहीं डरता, हमारे पास तो कुछ है नहीं, मगर मेरे पास भी अगर 100 करोड़ होगा तो मैं भी डरने लग जाऊंगा। प्रॉब्लम यही हो गई ना कि गरीब आदमी नहीं डर रहा क्योंकि उसके पास कुछ है नहीं, मगर जो भी आदमी इस लायक है कि वो डोनेशन दे सकता है वो आदमी डर रहा है क्योंकि उसके पास थोड़ा ही पैसा।
आप कह रहे हैं कि पारदर्शिता इज नॉट इनफ, जस्ट हैविंग मोर ट्रांसपेरेंसी इन फाइनेंसिंग।
हाँ मतलब पारदर्शिता,
बिकॉज़ लोग डर रहे हैं पारदर्शिता से।
पारदर्शिता तब है जब आप इसके अंदर चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस रखें। मतलब क्या है ना, पारदर्शिता तो है मगर उसका नुकसान हो रहा है फायदे की जगह।
ये तो ठीक नहीं लग रहा, मतलब मोर या विपुल।
नहीं, मैं बता रहा हूँ जो ऐसा है।
या विपुल
बताइए।
सौरभ जी, आप बहुत बढ़िया बोलते हैं और सब आपकी पार्टी का भी अलग तरह की पार्टी है। हमें बड़ी उम्मीदें थी कि आम आदमी पार्टी कुछ करके दिखाएगी, जैसे लोकायुक्त को लेकर।
अरे सर, अभी करके दिखाएंगे, अभी हम कोई खत्म कोई ना हो गए।
मतलब ये जो ट्रांसपेरेंसी वाले इश्यूज है ना, लोकायुक्त हुआ, RTI हुआ, उसमें मतलब ऐसा लगा नहीं कि आप कुछ अलग कर रहे हो।
आपकी बात से सहमत हूँ, हम लोग उलझ गए कुछ चीज़ों के अंदर, मगर अभी भी मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, हम लोग अभी जो है कुछ ना कुछ करेंगे, आपको जो है हताश नहीं होने देंगे।
अच्छा, ये जनाब पूछिए। बी ब्रीफ प्लीज।
हेलो सर, आई एम पीयूष, आई एम ए स्टूडेंट ऑफ लॉ। तो मेरा सवाल है कि लाइक आपने मेंशन किया, हम लोग यहाँ पे डिस्कस कर रहे हैं कि पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज का जो फंडिंग मिल रहा है वो हम लोग शो कर पा रहे हैं, बट उसमें भी ट्रांसपेरेंसी नहीं है। तो क्या जो इंडिविजुअल जो इलेक्शन कंटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, तो उनको भी अपने एफिडेविट में क्या जो उनको भी जहाँ से फंड आ रही है, जैसे सब आपने मेंशन किया कि हमें चेक से मिल रहा था, फिर लोगों ने हैंड टू हैंड ट्रांसफर किया, तो क्या इसको भी इंडिविजुअल्स को भी एफिडेविट में सबमिट करना?
नहीं, वो करना ही पड़ता है हमें। हमारा जो है, जब हम चुनाव लड़ते हैं तो हर हफ्ते हमें इलेक्शन कमीशन में जो आरओ होता है उनके पास जाके अपनी वो देनी पड़ती है कि हमारे पास कहाँ से पैसा आया और हमने किस पे खर्च किया। फिर इलेक्शन खत्म होने के एक हफ्ते बाद हमें पूरा ब्यौरा जो है जैसे ऑडिटेड टाइप का वो देना पड़ता है उन्हें, और अगर हम नहीं उसके अंदर दिक्कत आ जाए तो उसके ऊपर हमारे ऊपर जो है प्रोसिक्यूशन हो सकता है।
सर तो बट उसमें भी तो ट्रांसपेरेंसी नहीं है, लाइक आपने मेंशन किया लोगों ने कैश देना शुरू किया।
अरे मैंने क्या कहा, मैंने कहा लोगों ने ऑफर देना शुरू किया कि कैश ले लो, चेक मत लो। समझ रहे हो, लोग डरते हैं कि चेक की ट्रांजैक्शन जो है वो रिकॉर्ड में आ जाएगी और कल को उनको जो है विक्टिमाइज किया जाएगा, और किया जाता है। आप इस बात को समझो, इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड जो आपने करा, मतलब कितनी बड़ी चीज की है। मतलब मुझे लगता है कि पिछले 10 सालों का सबसे बड़ा फैसला जो आप लोग लेके आए वो इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड के बारे में लेके आए। अभी एक्साइज केस का फैसला आया जिसमें एक राउज एवेन्यू के जज ने क्या बात कही, आप उसको समझो। वो क्या कहता है कि आपने पहले किसी को एक्यूज बनाया कि मतलब तुम आरोपी हो, तुमने भ्रष्टाचार किया, फिर आपने उसको जेल में डाला, और फिर आपने उसको कहा कि तेरी जेल माफ कर दूंगा अगर तू गवाह बन जाए, और फिर तुमने उसको अप्रूवर बना लिया। अब उसका मैं एक एग्जांपल आपके इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड से लेता हूं। एक आदमी है, उनका नाम है शरत रेड्डी। शरत रेड्डी एक बहुत बड़ी फार्मास्यूटिकल कंपनी औरोबिंदो फार्मा के मालिक ही समझो, वैसे डायरेक्टर हैं, पिता हैं, भाई हैं, सब डायरेक्टर हैं। इन्होंने नवंबर 2022 में कहा कि भाई तुमने इतने करोड़ की रिश्वत दी इसलिए तुम जेल के अंदर। अब करोड़पति बाप का बेटा जेल के अंदर नवंबर में, जैसे ही जेल में गया 5 दिन के अंदर इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड से 5 करोड़ रुपए दिए बीजेपी को। वो जेल में रहा क्योंकि केस चल रहा था। कुछ महीने बाद मेडिकल बेल मिली, मतलब बीमारी के कारण उसको बेल दी गई। बेल पे बाहर आया, बाहर सेटिंग हुई, उससे बोला मैं सरकारी गवाह बन गया, सरकारी गवाह बना दिया गया। उसके बाद 50 करोड़ रुपए और उसी कंपनी ने, औरोबिंदो फार्मा और उसके आसपास कंपनी ने बीजेपी को और दिए। 55 करोड़ रुपए की खुल्लम खुल्ला रिश्वत उन्होंने उससे ली जिसको खुद इन्होंने बोला कि ये चोर है। हमने नहीं बोला, जिसको सीबीआई ईडी ने खुद बोला कि ये आदमी भ्रष्टाचारी है, इसने आम आदमी पार्टी को करोड़ों रुपए की रिश्वत दी। उस तथाकथित भ्रष्टाचारी चोर से इन्होंने 55 करोड़ रुपए लेके उसको गवाह बना लिया। अब आप सोचिए, तो खुल्लम खुल्ला है, मगर करोगे क्या? मैं आपको कहानी सुना दूंगा, कुछ लोगों को और सुना दूंगा, बट जो करोड़ों लोगों को एक कहानी सुनानी है, ये काम तो आज तक कर सकता है, बड़े बड़े टीवी चैनल कर सकते हैं, हम तो नहीं कर सकते। ये कहानी सुनाएंगे नहीं, ये समस्या है।
वो जो पीछे हैं बैठ में, आप पूछिए, फिर 2 सवाल लेंगे फिर।
Sir, a lot has been said about the corporate donation. So I have a suggestion. It's a practice in United Kingdom that any corporate donation has to be approved by the shareholders. So by this, at least
ये बड़ा अच्छा आइडिया है।
At least we can prevent funding
So
to
more disclosure by the corporates on whom they are, and getting consent from the shareholders.
ये बहुत अच्छा आइडिया है आपका।
Yes, sir. That can be decided from majority shareholder or 2/3, or that can be decided. And one question is, sir, what is the logic behind capping individual expenditure but not capping parties' expenditure?
कोई लॉजिक नहीं है, ऐसे ही है सब। लॉजिक कहाँ है?
So you support, your party will support the capping of party expenditure?
नहीं, बिल्कुल होना चाहिए। सबसे ज़्यादा ज़रूरी तो पार्टी कैपिंग ही है, पार्टी की कैपिंग ही सबसे ज़रूरी है भाई। जो पूरी दिल्ली में आप याद करिए 2025 के चुनाव में पूरी दिल्ली के अंदर सबसे ज़्यादा होर्डिंग बीजेपी के 60%, 40% कांग्रेस के, आम आदमी पार्टी का एक भी होर्डिंग नहीं देखा होगा आपने। नहीं था सर, हमने दिया ही नहीं पैसा, नहीं था। वो तो इलीगल होंगे जो लोग लगा लेते हैं। जो पेड होर्डिंग होते हैं ना, जिसमें एमसीडी को देते हैं, नो होर्डिंग। आपने जिंगल सुने होंगे बीजेपी के रेडियो पे, कांग्रेस के हमारा जिंगल भी नहीं था। हमारे पास पैसा ही नहीं था सर, इस बार 16 करोड़ रुपए थे सिर्फ।
And sir, do you support state funding of elections as it has been recommended by various committees also, like Indrajit Gupta committee?
मतलब if there is a state funding, they should not be allowed to spend anything other than state funding. It should not be that in addition to that you will get state funding also. फिर तो बीजेपी के और मजे आ जाएंगे।
तो वही तो डर है कि प्राइवेट, वो बोले थे मनीष तिवारी की बैकडोर से प्राइवेट आ जाएगा।
हाँ हाँ।
So then, but how long do we wait for that, you know?
सर मैं 2 क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहता हूँ, आपका भी राय लेना चाहता हूँ। और इलेक्शन कमिश्नर साहब भी बैठे हैं, फिर फॉर्मर इलेक्शन कमिश्नर
साहब
ये जो बैठे हैं सर।
अच्छा सर
तो सर मैं 2 क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहता हूँ, आपके पर राय भी देना चाहता हूँ सर। जैसे राइट टू वोट एंड इलेक्ट द MP एंड MLA है, तो उसको हम राइट टू रिमूव द सेम MLA MP बाय द सेम वोटर्स क्यों नहीं हो सकता है? एक
हो तो सकता है।
और सर दूसरी बात है कि ये जो फ्रीबीज को हम क्यों बंद नहीं कर देते हैं? ऐसे देखा जाए तो आम आदमी पार्टी पहले स्टार्ट की दिल्ली में।
अरे तो हमने ऐसे कोई ना दिया
तो
था।
सर ये फ्रीबीज क्यों, जैसे ये क्या नाम है, बिजली का मीटर और फ्री बस एंड एटसेट्रा जो स्टार्ट किए, वो क्यों बंद नहीं किया जाता है सर? वो बंद करने में क्या प्रॉब्लम है? और ये जो राइट टू रिमूव द MP MLA बाय द सेम वोटर्स, ये क्यों प्रोविजन नहीं है? और करें तो क्या प्रॉब्लम है और क्या फायदा है, बताइए।
देखिए क्या है कि राइट टू रिकॉल एक अच्छा ऑप्शन है, आ जाए तो बहुत अच्छा है। मगर क्या है, आप समझिए कि रिकॉल से भी आपका कुछ हल होना नहीं है। आपको दोबारा भी मौका देंगे ना, तो दोबारा उसी को चुन लेंगे, क्योंकि उसके पास सब कुछ है दोबारा चुने जाने का। समझ रहे हैं? कोई इक्का दुक्का तो जरूर हो सकता है कि वो ना चुना जाए, मगर वो जनरली जिस सिस्टम से वो ऑपरेट करते हैं वो लोग, वो दोबारा भी जीत जाएंगे। कर दो बंद, हमें क्या, अब तो हम है नहीं, बंद कर दो।
Okay, so if there are any other, yeah. Yes.
ठीक है, thank you so much.
Thank you, Saurabh ji. Thank you very much. Thank you. Dr. Sahoo, please. Yeah.
I had a PowerPoint. Is possible to upload the PowerPoint?
Yeah, it is already
okay.
uploaded.
Yeah, very good afternoon and thanks ADR for inviting me. Politicians have already stolen the limelight, so for academicians, you know, analysts, it becomes a difficult job to really add on, you know, what is left out. But I want to actually draw your attention to few trends. Actually, I think you just look at where are we headed actually in terms of political funding, regulations, and then the kind of uneven play field, you know, between the ruling party and then the opposition parties. And then the kind of entry barrier that has been, you know, created, you know, for any meritorious candidates or any women, youth who wants to enter politics, it's impossible without sound, you know, financial base or dynasty, political support, or, you know, where you have no chance actually to really succeed. So I just want to show you a few things, because we are actually talking about political funding, political finance at a time when we are actually going through unprecedented democratic backsliding, not only in India, globally, you know, starting with the Trump administrations, you know, where institutions are gutted, finished, you know, day, night, you know, kind of demolition of democracy. Every institution is actually ruined. And the same story you can see in any other country, including our. So I think, and that it's not easy to talk about, you know, political accountability, transparency at a time when you are going through that sort of backsliding. Everything is happening through lawfully. through legal, using the law, manipulating the institution. You are not imposing a kind of emergency like Indira Gandhi did, that suspending democracy or putting everybody behind the bar. You are not doing that, but you are using every instrument of the state, every laws that exist, and then also add on more laws if you can't do, to basically subvert the institution, to use the democratic process, democratic institution to your advantage. And that's where we are headed. I just wanted to give you a kind of, theoretical perspective. That first one, please, the first one, yeah. This is critical because, see, as a political scientist, and I've spent at least nearly 2 decades, if you look at the money is a very, very critical, component of democracy. Democratic politics cannot exist without money. You need actually, because to communicate to your voters, to reach out to them, to put off your narratives, you need at least a minimum level of, money. If not, you need hundreds of crores or other thing, but at least you need at least few crores for a constituency of our size. So if you look at political theorists and political philosophers like John Rawls, Robert Dahl, these are the big names actually who in the global AA, who have advocated that a minimum floor level of finance is needed. And this is not about just modern age, 21st century. Money was needed even when you had the Athenian democracy. The Greek philosopher used to talk about, money is the mother milk of the politics. Thrasymachus said it in 320 BC. I mean, then even it was money needed actually, because you need to really reach out to voters and communicate. So that's where we are. So minimum level of finance is needed. But what's happening is that today we are going through unprecedented, where you have level playing field has completely gone in favor of people who are in power, and they actually have captured every instrument of political finance, where actually they enjoy huge advantage over the A. So someone like John Rawls said that we have to really preserve the equal political finance. That equality in political finance is vital. Without that, what will happen? You don't have an equal opportunity to also persuade your voters. You can't reach out. If you have a small money other thing, once in a while someone like Kejriwal or Prafula Mahanta can win. But those are not kind of a regular election. So for that you need. So what is happening is that we are in a situation where you have unequal political finance, and equalize, with unequal political finance you can't create a kind of equalizing influence to be a. So next, just look at this graph will tell you about the funding gap actually, and this is where actually the level playing field has completely changed. You have the ruling party. Just look at how between 2019, how it has climbed to the top in terms of these are known source of funding, above 2,000 rupees, and then you look at the Congress. Congress is almost like probably 5 times less actually than what BJP gets, and then smaller regional parties are actually at the bottom. Next slide. Just look at a decade back. What was the situation between Congress and BJP? Just look at that striking point about election, 2014 election when BJP won. Before that, you just look at how even BJP was out of power for 10 years, between 2004 to 2014. Even then, the gap between BJP and Congress was actually very narrow. And in fact, when Congress was in power, BJP was, in 2014, around the election, BJP was having more money actually in its coffer. But that situation, if you look at, has really completely changed. The previous slide, as I showed, has completely changed in favor of the ruling A. So you are actually looking at the kind of funding disparities which is impossible to breeze by any means. Next slide, please. And look at the corporate donations. It's more precarious. And corporate donation is almost like 2/3 of the money comes through corporate donations. Earlier it was electoral bonds, electoral trust, and several other sources, corporate donate. And if you look at that, it is just almost like 83% are captured by just one party. Rest have to actually divide between them. So this is the kind of asymmetry you are looking at in terms of funding. So where is the level playing field? Where is the kind of equalizing influence? Next slide, please. Now, the second trend is actually, it's just not about the donation and political funding in which you have huge disparities which is growing. you have also intensifying corporate dominance. It's just electoral bonds, those who have actually tracked, you would have seen nearly 99% of, electoral bonds, donations were above 1 crore. So what does that indicate? That you and me are donating. It's basically large business houses, corporate who are actually donating. So corporate donation is actually dominating the entire, political finance landscape. And then you look at also who are the emerging, players actually in terms of donation. If you look at electoral bonds data, mostly mining barons, real estate magnates, infrastructure companies, and now pharmas. These are the 5-6 areas in which actually who are donating massively. And then another issue is that they were not just donating. A lot of them are also getting into the politics. And if you look at the wealthy candidates, crorepati candidates, that have in last 3-4 elections, if you look at, nearly 90% are actually crorepati, and a lot of them started actually very humble background. But if you look at the way they have accumulated, so it's a cozy kind of proximity, and that closeness between business and politics is actually changing. The entire level playing field is becoming unequal, and this is also becoming a major disadvantage for smaller parties, ideological based parties like left parties. They are completely left, because they don't take corporate money and all that. So where from they get? Next step, please. And look at the impact. These impacts, all of you actually know. Main problem is actually the growing role of interested money. Those who are corporates who are giving the money, they are not giving it for charity. They are expecting something in return. It's basically quid pro quo kind of things. So that rising incidence of cronyism, and that you have seen during the that entire electoral bond day, and Saurabh was giving just one example of that pharma company, but there are so many you can find actually. Then the real impact is that, as I said, women and young candidates are actually out of the electoral fray mostly. If some of them have the blessing of the party, or they are from some dynasty, or from wealthy backgrounds, they stand a chance, but rest cannot take, because in many cases actually they have to in fact give a large kind of money to get the tickets from the lot of regional parties. It's very common actually. So what is happening today is that we are actually facing a situation in the background of unprecedented, democratic backsliding is also level playing field, which has completely transformed. And with that we have slack regulations. So election commission doesn't have either the capacity or appetite to go after the violators. No affidavit, no sort of expenditure is really audited and publicly disclosed, and you haven't seen a political party facing any sort of consequences for violating it. Next slide, please. Yeah. So yeah, a couple of minutes. So major recommendation here I said the usual things like what we saw from the politicians speaking here just before I think we have to stick to the regulations. We have to stick to the institutions. We have to have that instrumentalist approach somehow. Unless we have the legal foundation, unless we have the regulation and other in place, you cannot really say that political parties will self-regulate or candidates will self-regulate themselves. That is a wishful thinking. We have to have a robust system and enforcement that has to really come up, and political parties have to really take a lot of those reforms. But final thing on which I'll spend a couple of minutes is that I've been advocating for a pretty long time about political funding, because see, I just explained to you how the entire asymmetry, that disparities has grown. Now smaller parties, other thing, even new parties are left to nothing, and even ruling party won't allow you actually to even access resources, other thing, because it can be easily caught actually in a surveillance age actually. So how do you really stand a chance? Here, I think lot of large, European countries, lot of other Latin American countries have actually for many decades actually have adopted state funding and public funding models, in which they to encourage political competitions and get newer parties, and allow existing parties who are not in a position, especially the parties who support the green lobby, climate pro party, or party which are pro labor, they can actually stay in the contention if you have some kind of options from the states. Next slide, please. And look at how actually this is something I've done a long paper. You can actually Google and find about state funding and public funding of elections. So around 100 countries we examined, and we found, except some countries, but in most of the countries where you have proper regulation and check, check and kind of enforcement is in place with upper cap and all that, it has reduced the cost of elections because you have put a cap that this is maximum you can spend, both candidates and political parties, and then you have banned the corporate funding. So this has reduced the cost, because election cost, the way it is spiraling, actually is forcing a lot of people to spend extra, thinking that that gives them a chance to win. So that has to happen. And you have to, it also limits the influence of big money, because you have to completely ban the corporate funding, because if the state is giving the funding, then you can't take money from any other sources. That, if that happens, it reduces, promotes electoral competitions also, in a sense that new parties, smaller parties also get certain advantage because they also can access state funding. And it also promotes institutionalization, because wherever state funding has been introduced or public funding has been introduced, it has come with series of conditionalities, that there will be upper cap, you have to submit all the bills and every expenditure on time. Then there will be also inner party democracy. Political parties also have to reform and allow regular elections, and many other conditionalities are put in places like UK and Brazil. So I think all that actually mixture can actually lead us to a. Otherwise, in no way we can actually bridge this gap, that asymmetry that has grown. And level playing cannot be really maintained in existing conditions. So we have the silver bullet, I would say, not magic bullet, is state funding. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll take the last speaker and then take questions. So Mr. Venkatesh has been online. Can we have him now?
Thank you, Dr. Ranade. I hope I am audible.
Yes, yes, yes. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ranade. I hope I am audible.
Yes, yes, yes. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I am at a disadvantage for two reasons. With the honorable exception of Dr. Sahoo, most of my co-panelists have left, and I had hoped that what I was going to present in the course of my 8 to 10 minutes, would actually get them to make some commitments. But anyway, it doesn't matter. We still have a former chief election commissioner in our midst, and I'm actually expecting to hear from him a reaction to what I'm going to present now. We have heard a lot about the policy prescriptions that require to be done in order to improve the system of political financing. Is that going to happen in my lifetime? I'm not so sure. Does that mean that as an ordinary citizen, I'm going to sit quiet and wait for that change to come as and when it's likely to happen? No, we have at least one tool with us, which is RTI. And what I'm going to present today is how I have used it in order to show something, if not nothing, about the system that exists for monitoring electoral expenditure. It is so interesting. We've had 18 Lok Sabhas elected, and I haven't kept count of the number of Vidhan Sabhas that have been elected in India since independence. What is the total amount of expenditure to the state's exchequer on conducting elections is information that we don't know. This is a big surprise, but I'm not getting into that today. How much money do political parties spend on elections? We've heard my previous co-panelists talk about the funding, the filing of reports, expenditure reports, the upper limit not being adequate, this, that, etc. I don't know how many of you are aware that there was a snippet that was put out by the Center for Media Studies soon after the 2024 Lok Sabha elections were over. And they said, according to their estimate, about 1 lakh crore rupees were spent by political parties on the elections. Not only the Lok Sabha elections, but also the 4 states which had simultaneous Vidhan Sabha elections. Now, I'm not going to comment on that any further. I'm just putting that figure in front of you because we don't know what is the methodology that Center for Media Studies used to arrive at that figure. So, it can't be discussed. But I want to connect my presentation to what Mr. Saurabh Bhardwaj said. He pointed out the several methods that are used for influencing the voter and what is the impact of that. What we did not hear till now in this panel discussion is whether there are any systemic measures that are in place to detect these malfeasance, these kinds of inducements, these kinds of intimidatory tactics, and are there requirements that the Election Commission has to put in place to prevent them from happening or for taking some action once it gets knowledge that inducement is happening and intimidatory tactics are happening. Now, that is a whole area where we don't even know what is the volume of information that is generated and handed over to the Election Commission from the constituency level through the chief electoral offices, because none of that is public with very, very small exceptions. Even I was not aware of this. Frankly speaking, 3 years ago, in a similar event like this held in a similar place in Delhi when I was still a Delhiite, 2 months ago, I relocated to Bangalore permanently. So I attended that conference, and my basic understanding of the fact that there is an entire mechanism of reporting at several stages which Election Commission has put in place. It exists, but we don't know anything about it. So that was my first Jnanodaya moment. And then I made the effort to read up about these reports, because the manuals which contain these reports, the reporting requirements, they are all publicly available, even though the contents of the report themselves are not available. So this is a story of about 7 RTI interventions that I'm going to put before you very, very briefly. Don't worry, I'm not going to take you through every single word that you see on your screen. But this is also in response to the questions that have been repeatedly raised by our very young participants here, very concerned participants, very sensitive participants, asking what can we do as citizens? So I'm going to tell you what I did as a citizen after learning from ADR's previous event about what can be done, and here's the story. Not many of us were aware, even I was not aware until I attended that conference and started reading the manuals, that in order to detect the kind of inducement tactics that Saurabh Bhardwaj talked about, there is a mechanism that the ECI has put in place for spotting them. There is something called expenditure-sensitive Lok Sabha constituencies, where it is highly likely that certain political parties or certain candidates are likely to spend much beyond the cap that the conduct of election rules have imposed on how much money can be spent on campaigning. Similarly, within assembly segments, there are expenditure-sensitive pockets that are identified at least 6 months in advance of the general election or the by-election. And then there are expenditure observer reports that the expenditure observers were always officers of the Indian Revenue Service who are deputed to every constituency. They send 4 kinds of reports, and that becomes the basis for the Election Commission, if at all it wants to take any action on what it needs to do about what is happening in these expenditure-sensitive constituencies. So in July 24, after the Lok Sabha elections were declared, the House was constituted, and a very nice, beautiful media moment where the Chief Election Commissioner, along with his colleagues, the current, commissioners who presented that entire list of Lok Sabha MPs to the President of India, all of that we saw. So after the entire process was over, so that my RTI intervention would not intervene or interrupt the electoral process. So all of this was done post-poll. So I asked simple questions. Can you please give me a list of expenditure-sensitive parliamentary constituencies in every state and union territory? The assembly segment-wise list of expenditure-sensitive pockets in those states and UTs. And then a copy of the 4 kinds of reports that expenditure observers are supposed to file at the start of the electoral process, the implementation of the Model Code of Conduct, and the completion of polling. And then a series of other annexures that are supposed to be attached to the consolidated seizure reports that are submitted to the Election Commission through these chief electoral officers from the constituency level. And you would be very surprised to know, look at the 3rd column. After more than a month had passed, the Election Commission's public information officer says that the information that you are asking is not available in compiled form. So under section 7(9), they can't give it to you. And then of the RTI Act. And then they said that because you are asking information across the entire country, this is information that is available with the various CEOs. So you should go and ask them, but we can't transfer it to them. And then as far as observer reports, the 4 kinds of reports that they said that we know should be submitted to the commission, the Election Commission said that these reports are exempt under Section 81G of the RTI Act, which means that these are all prepared in the context of law enforcement and they can't be disclosed. And then the 4th one, which is the consolidated seizure reports. Believe me, state-wise consolidated seizure reports of how much illegal cash was seized, illicit liquor was seized, jewelry in the form of gold, silver, diamonds were seized, and then campaign materials like dhoti, sari, etc., which were caught to prevent them from being distributed to the voters as inducement. They said this information is not available with us. Now, this is so surprising that an election commission, which actually put out some of the provisional figures initially, sometime in May, that so many thousands of crores worth of material was seized, was saying that we don't have this information. And later on, around the same time, I submitted a similar RTI application with the one state from which I hail, which is Karnataka, with the CEO. And you would be surprised to know when I got their Karnataka state level, consolidated seizure report, because district-wise data was given, there was a significant discrepancy between what the CEO Karnataka was saying and what the Election Commission of India was saying in their provisional reports. Now, this is so surprising. I will leave it at that. Now, let me go to the next one. Please go on to page number 3, if you can scroll, because I can't quite see. You have highlighted me on screen, so I cannot see the... yes, now better. Page number 3. Yes. Yes. Now, I asked similar, sensitive, expenditure-sensitive constituency reports and a list of that from within Karnataka. I asked the CEO, please give me at least this list after elections are over, so that there is no blame put on us that information can't be shared because it will interrupt the electoral process. Can you please scroll up? The Election Commission, the CEO Karnataka. Sorry. Can you scroll down? Sorry. The CEO Karnataka's office actually quoted a Central Information Commission decision saying that according to this decision, even the list of sensitive constituencies can't be disclosed. And can you go to the next page? Before I joined this session, I did a search because the Information Commission's decision number is given, file number is given. As of today, and this is something I had known soon after the reply came, but today I'm giving you today's latest situation. That decision is simply not uploaded on the CIC's website. So we don't know what is this decision. It even prevents us from asking, detailed information or even filing any appeal against this kind of a response. So when the simplest question, I know.
Venkatesh, can you hear us or are you disconnected? Yeah, can you just check whether he's online? Okay, so anyway, we are running out of time. We've crossed the time. So if there are any brief, quick questions for Mr. Sahoo or Mr. Venkatesh, please let me know. Or we can actually take the discussion over lunch break because we don't want to.
Maybe a couple of questions.
Yeah, so can you just tell him to reconnect in case, Any questions? So any quick closing comments, Dr. Sahoo? Because we should wrap up now. We are over time.
Venkatesh.
Yeah, we'll wait for him to reconnect. In the meantime, any closing comments from you?
Yeah. No, what I actually, feel is that, we are, even what Venkatesh also elaborated, about the role of Election Commission, not very forthcoming in terms of, disclosing, even routine kind of information. So that itself gives you an indications where are we today. Not only in terms of transparency, RTI, all that is gradually, being backslided, and, that access to a lot of routine informations are denied by a number of institutions. And this is something what Election Commission is doing was probably not thought about, a couple of years back. So, but today we are in a situation where Election Commission is also under pressure or in some way or other being, manipulated so that even routine informations are actually denied. So I'm saying we are actually witnessing unprecedented kind of, backsliding, democratic backsliding, in which every institutions, all the vital institutions are under pressure or manipulated or weaponized. Laws are actually in some way or other also weaponized and, manipulated in such a way that, opposition, especially because in a democracy, election is actually the main, kind of, foundation on which, you seek to represent the people. And if that electoral process, electoral integrity is actually violated so brazenly, then public trust, which is now eroding, is actually can lead us to chaos and anarchy, which we have seen many countries where, how it actually, what sort of consequences it brings. The second thing is that level playing field is very vital. As I said, in my presentation I showed that, equalizing, the influence is very critical, and the oppositions not only need actually a minimum level of, funding and all that to stay in the contention, but it's also whether the institutions are actually guaranteeing that the election is going to be free and fair. If the election is not going to be, if it's election, we may say with EVM and all that election is, free, but whether that election is fair, whether, the conduct of elections official and others is fair, and trust, can political parties trust actually opposition parties? So these are actually critical questions, and how we actually bridge this funding gap actually, because this gap is impossible to manage. So we have to really seriously think something like, state funding or some, options. Because I can just give you one example, like Meloni, who is now the Prime Minister of Italy. The party which was, the party that actually won Italy elections just 10 years back, actually, it was a newly launched party, and that party actually just accessed the public funding, available, because it didn't have the money. It could, gather those kind of money, and it won the elections. It swept the elections. So I'm saying, if you have that kind of opportunity today, many of the parties which are actually, their base is shrinking, their donation is shrinking, and then environment is also not conducive for them to stay in the contentions. I think a lot of them also can actually stay in the political competition, and that's always a healthy thing for the democracy. So I think we need a institutionalized kind of response, and public funding, I think opposition parties should actually back it, because you will be left with nothing, actually no other source to, get and stay in the contentions. Okay. So I think it's in the interest of the opposition that they should push for public funding, which other countries have done well, and it keeps the space open to stay alive as democracy.
We'll just take just quickly 2 or 3 questions. Shelly, if you can read them out from the online participants.
So yes, the first question is from Mr. Parth Shah. He's the founder trustee of Center for Civil Society. His first question is, political parties themselves are not democratically governed, which has important implications when the leaders of such political parties form the government. Germany and other countries have political party law in some ways similar to company or corporate law. What would democratic governance of political parties look like?
Okay. Can you read the other questions? We'll take them all together.
Right. So his second question is, what are the levers of change in the existing system that can help us move towards democratic governance of political parties?
So it's about inner party democracy. Any other thing you want to read? We need to really wrap up because we are far beyond time now.
We have another question which says, regarding transparency in financing an election from the perspective of political parties in the fray, is there even today any real transparency, post-electoral, bond or otherwise?
Okay. So I think anyway, the first question is regarding inner party democracy. This really a session was on financial transparency in parties and elections and democracy. So I don't think, maybe we can take it up in the next session, Dr. Vipul. Of course, this one, the second question is almost rhetorical. Is there transparency today? I don't think so. We need much more. So let me just take the liberty, because we're running out of time and we should wrap up. This session was on financial transparency, how to do, what are the concrete ideas. I'm happy that one gentleman has suggested something very, very concrete and can be considered, which is when there are corporate donations, not only the corporations are required to disclose whom they are donating to, but also that they should take shareholder consent. So that's a very one concrete solution that I think we can consider. Second one was that there can be, we can consider a cap on corporate donation, an upper limit. So that is something. The third one, of course, Dr. Sahoo and many others keep referring to, that can we start going towards, at least partially towards public funding of elections, so that it reduces some asymmetry. But that's something to consider. So I thank you all. Thank you to all the panelists and to all of you for patiently being part of this session.